The Los Angeles Rams suffer the worst loss in the Sean McVay era. How they can still finish with the 1 seed. And what did Puka Nacua do now? That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
You are Locked On Rams, your daily Los Angeles Rams podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Ramily, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Rams, your daily podcast covering your Los Angeles Rams, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Locked On Rams, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network, your team every day. We're also available over on YouTube, so if you haven't yet, do us a huge favor. Join the party, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. If you want to support every single episode, hit the like button and drop a comment down below. Podcast listeners, write us a review. We'll read on the show. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. I've covered LA sports for over a decade, 24/7 sports, Bleacher Report, SI, Dodgers Nation, the LA Sports Report. As always, I'm joined by the Rams pre-half and post-game show host for the Rams flagship radio station, ESPN 710 LA. He's in his 11th season covering your Los Angeles Rams, the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers. You can follow him on X at Travis Rogers. And on today's episode, we are reacting and breaking down what I think it's pretty safe to say is the worst regular season loss, possibly the worst loss in the Sean McVay era with the Los Angeles Rams. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. All right, Travis, just an all-time Thursday night football game, an all-time collapse for the Los Angeles Rams. This is a game that they had in hand. You had a win probability in the high 90s at one point. Midway through the fourth quarter, you had a 16-point lead. The Rams, in their history, 323-1 when they had a 15-plus point lead there in the fourth quarter, and now that record stands at 323-2. Just an incredibly improbable loss, but where do you want to start, Travis?
I'm still trying to figure out exactly how they did what they did, how Seattle did what they did, how Seattle had Sam Darnold, play like Sam Darnold basically for 3.5 quarters, and then for the second half of the fourth quarter in overtime, he turned into a high level NFL quarterback where he was just throwing darts all over the field. It was an incredibly disheartening loss. Now, look, I know what the players are going to say. I know what Sean McVay is going to say. They're going to say the things that professional athletes say after difficult losses. Everything that we want is still available to us. We're not going to let this beat us twice. We're going to get back to work. It's not what happens, it's how you respond and all of these things. And I guess that's all true. But what's so incredibly disappointing is if they play the last 7 minutes or so of that game the way they played the first part of that game, the world opens up to them, right? Everything's going to run through SoFi Stadium. And the way that Matthew Stafford plays and has been playing all season long, you can't help but think that they are on the verge of doing something real special. They still can, but it's going to be so much more difficult. There's going to be so many more hurdles that are in their way. They're going to have to go on the road, more likely than not throughout the entire postseason. And we know how difficult that is. That's just not something that happens very often. So I'm still trying to figure out how a team that makes so few mistakes made so many in a relatively short period of time. And then, of course, that just bizarre sequence of events on that 2-point conversion is still, I've watched it a million times, Doug, and maybe it went backwards, maybe it didn't. I just don't understand how the play can get blown dead the way it does. And without like a challenge or anything else, they just decide to review it on their own, and guy just picks it up to basically hand the ball to the referee. It just was a incredibly weird night in Seattle.
Yeah, there's so much to get into, and you can start there. I mean, look, we're not blaming the referees, guys, and I know that players aren't going to blame the referees, guys, except Puka Nacua, who decided to tweet about the referees after the game from the locker room. We'll get into that in a little bit, but there's no doubt about it that when you go on the road, you have to leave no doubt. You have to make sure that from an execution standpoint, from a avoiding mistakes standpoint, that everything has to be as clean as possible, or you set yourself up for weird things to happen, and you set yourself up to put the games in the hands of the referees. We know the refs are not good, especially this year. And you look at the touchdown in the first half with Dedich that wasn't illegal and downfield that should have counted. Terrence Ferguson should have scored a touchdown there. There was some missed face mask calls on that return. You had the 2-point conversion, which, look, I've been watching football my entire life. I know you have as well. I've never seen anything like that. You can hear audibly the whistle before Zach Charbonnet touches that football. It should have been blown dead. That was ridiculous. And at the end of the day, the defense, they're coached to get on that football too. So they need to be on that football as well. And then here's another thing. I was screaming at my television in the fourth quarter, and then in overtime, there were some opportunities to go for 2. And the Rams should have gone for 2 in overtime. They really should have. I know hindsight's 2020, the hindsight hyenas for sure. But when you look at the way the overtime rules are set, if they go for 2 and they don't get it, then you're still putting it in the hands of your defense to have to keep them out of the end zone, because you know Seattle, they're not going to stand to benefit with a tie. The Rams would have had still a 69% chance of finishing with the 1 seed with a tie. So it really wouldn't have hurt you to go for 2 in that situation. Then if they get it, then you get the ball back with 2 or 3 minutes to try to get a field goal, try to get a score to win that game. So I'm shocked they didn't go for 2. But really, this comes down to a couple different things too. Special teams, a disaster.
Oh my
God.
God.
Absolute, unmitigated, catastrophic disaster. And all championship teams, for the most part, are really good in all 3 phases of the game: offense, defense, and special teams. And even though you had those 3 and outs in the fourth quarter, even though the defense gave up 30-plus points and they definitely looked gassed at the end, they weren't getting pressure. You had the DBs 10 yards off receivers, big cushion, all that conservative style that we kind of freak out about when they lose. They still would have won if you did not give a punt return for a touchdown in a 10-second span to Rashid Shaheed and you didn't miss a field goal. It's an absolute disaster of an operation that cost the Rams potentially the 1 seed.
It cost him the 1 seed. Cost him the 1 seed last night. It cost him the 1 seed in Philadelphia. It cost him the 1 seed against San Francisco on Thursday night early in the season. That this is the story of the 2025 Rams. If it doesn't, end the way that we're all hoping that it does, will be about their inability to get that squared away. And it's really that simple, because their offense is scoring, nearly 35 points a game. Their defense, not a very good night last night, with the exception of Kobe Turner, but certainly good enough to win a title. But their special teams is so far below the line that it's borderline laughable. I want to go back to something you said a second ago about how you're not a blame the refs guy. I'm not a blame the refs guy. I think if anybody listens to Locked On Rams regularly, they know that's true. But here's a guy that's really not a blame the refs guy, and that's Sean McVay. Sean McVay doesn't, point fingers. Sean McVay didn't do that. When he spoke after the game on our radio station, briefly when he's coming off the field, he'll talk with JB Long and Maurice Jones-Drew, and it's usually somewhere between a minute or two, and just, it's usually pretty typical Sean McVay stuff. This was, he talked about the referees. He talked about how he had never seen anything like this before, and dropped a profanity, and clearly was incredibly frustrated by what he had seen from the officials. So that's how big. Sean McVay doesn't do that, right? Sean McVay doesn't make excuses. Sean McVay doesn't point the finger outward. He always talks about how, they need to get better. The team needs to get better. He needs to put people in a position to win. But that he said, I've never seen blank like that before. I can't believe some of the stuff that was going on out there. That really grabbed me. That was one of those, wow, this is not what he does. And that's how frustrated he was in the situation. So, it was bad. But again, even with all of that stuff, they still had more self-inflicted wounds. That you just said it, that punt return, but the game was over. When Kobe Turner intercepted that ball, all the Rams had to do was get a first down, maybe 2, and the game was going to be, there just wasn't enough time for them to get back in the game. Instead, they basically cut the lead in half like this without burning any time off the clock. Right? It just, they went from a 16-point deficit to an 8-point deficit in about 10 seconds. And now all of a sudden it's a game. Now you have to move the ball. Now you not only have to get a first down or 2, you probably are going to need to get the ball and maybe not score again, but certainly drive a time or 2 again. And they go 3 and out again. They give up a 2-play, 57-yard drive immediately after that. They scored 2 touchdowns in less than about a minute and a half. That can't happen. And now you're chasing it. Now you're on your heels. And give the Rams a lot of credit that they were able to drive down. They were able to put their team in a position to win the game. Mevis misses his first kick as a Ram. And then even after that, they get the ball in overtime and they hit the big play to Puka. They score again, and they still can't close the show. It was incredibly uncharacteristic from them, almost across the board. The only guy that kind of looked like himself two guys that looked like himself all night were the quarterback and Puka Nacua. Stafford and Nacua were terrific, but everyone else was having a night that just didn't make any sense, and it almost all happened from about the 7-minute mark through the end of the game.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. That those guys were on. Puka's arguably his best game. Matthew Stafford, 100% MVP performance. Yep. I think on the defensive side of the football,
Doug, like that may have cost him the MVP. Not because of anything he did. He threw for 457 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. He was awesome, but you don't give the MVP to a team that finishes in third place. You just don't, and that's very likely where they're going to end up, and it's a tragedy because he has had an MVP season, and it went from if they win that game, it's over. It's over. He wins the MVP, and now it is far from over. It is wide open at this point.
I'm so glad I didn't tweet what I almost tweeted, and I try to be like the first guy to say things sometimes so I can like brag about it. You know what I mean? And I literally had a tweet crafted where I was saying, congratulations to Matthew Stafford for winning the 2025, as if it was like a formal announcement. So glad I didn't tweet that, because absolutely you're right. It was an MVP performance. He's deserving the MVP, but Josh Allen could get that 1 seed. Could win the division, and Drake May, and you're absolutely right. But coming up next, more fallout from the worst loss of the Sean McVay era. Later in the show, we'll tell you how the Rams could still finish with a 1 seed. It's improbable, but I'll lay it out for you so you can have some of that hopium that I know you want. We'll get that at the end of the show. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994. With 48 teams for the first time ever, it's going to be massive. But let's be honest, getting tickets is usually the hardest part. That's why the Gametime app is clutch, finally giving fans a real advantage when it comes to snagging seats. And with Gametime, you can track price drops in real time, get alerts when great seats open, and buy tickets the moment they hit the app. It puts the power back in your hands and makes going to the World Cup realistic instead of impossible. You pull up the app, and the layout makes it super easy to scroll through the matchups and compare seat views. You pick a game, you tap a section, and you have your tickets loaded within minutes. No confusion, no hunting for the fine print. Prices include fees up front. It's my favorite part. So no last second surprises at checkout. We've all had that happen where oh, that's a pretty good. And then wait, what? Where did that come from? Not going to happen, right? So take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets and every match, concert, or event with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download the app, make an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off Gametime.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Yeah, Travis, just to continue to give everyone a better idea about how improbable that loss was. The Rams are the first team ever to gain 500-plus yards and win the turnover margin by 3 and still lose a game. The last 93 teams were 93-0. They're now 93-1. Also, teams that had got 550 yards and committed 0 turnovers or 175-22-2. That Rams are the 23rd team to lose that way. Teams that have had at least 400 yards with 0 giveaways, 0 sacks, and taken 3 takeaways were 79-0. It was just the most improbable way to lose. And as you point out, the offense, almost 600 total yards. And yes, you saw them get those 3 3-and-outs that were pivotal. But I think when I said in the first segment, I know they have a championship offense. I know they do. I absolutely know they do. I don't know if they have a championship defense right now. And outside of Kobe Turner, who had his best game as a Ram, a sack and a half, he was getting in there, had that big interception. He took the blame for that 2-point conversion, not getting on the football right there. Where was Byron Young? where was Jared Verse? Because if you don't get pressure, it exposes the corners. And yes, they did a really nice job on JSN in the first half, but just look at that defense on Barner for the touchdown. Their defense was trying to get Kobe Turner to tip that football. You gave up 30 points, 30 plus points to the Lions, 30 plus points to the Seahawks. You gave up 30 plus points to the Carolina Panthers. I mean, I really question this defense, and they're going to really have to dig deep and get back to their principles if they want to make a deep run. As you're pointing out earlier, it's going to be a tough task going on the road the way they are.
Yeah, and your offense is not going to be able to perform at that level in the postseason the way that it does during the regular season. It's clearly far more difficult to move the ball in the cold. You're going to be playing against much better teams. So to think that you're just going to race people to 35 points in the postseason, that's a tough ask. Now, we've seen them play pretty good defense at various points in the season. We've talked about how there's been times during the year that you and I both are like, hey, is this a defensive first team? I think we know the answer to that now. No, it's not. But we do know that it has the ability to look pretty good at times, and they can get to the quarterback. They can rush. Hopefully Quentin Lake comes back as we get a little closer to the postseason. I think he'll make a really big difference, kind of solidify some things back there. But I'll give them a little credit. They were opportunistic. They did turn the ball over. They did force that fumble on Cooper Kupp. They did have a couple of interceptions. They nearly had a pick six. Like they had some moments along the way, and it's a weird deal because the give up 38 points. You're probably going to lose just about every single time. But I really do think this was more on the offense on those 3 and outs. As weird as it sounds, like you said, they have 500 plus total yards. Matthew Stafford, over 450 yards. Puka Nacua, 225 yards and a pair of touchdowns along the way. But those 3 and outs came at a time where they simply can't come. You get one of those drives that goes from a 3-play drive to a 6-play drive. No one's saying you got to go on a 10, 12-play drive and burn 6 minutes off the clock. Just a little more pressure on Sam Darnold, a little less time for him to operate, and I think that game is a lot different. But yeah, look, everything changed last night. Is it possible to go to the Super Bowl? Yes. Would I be flabbergasted if all of a sudden they ended up in a situation where they're in San Francisco and everybody's saying, no, this was the thing that galvanized it? Sure, it's certainly a possibility, but they looked like the best team in the NFL right up until they didn't. And everybody else is so closely compacted together that they go from the 1 to the 5. They're not going to stay at the 5. If Indianapolis can't beat the 49ers, the Rams are going to fall to the 6. That's Philadelphia, bro. I mean, that is going into Philadelphia. Good luck with that. And we saw what it looked like last year. We saw what it looked like earlier this year. It's a totally different path to something that was, I don't know if I want to say likely, but certainly a good possibility.
For sure. I mean, it is going to be a daunting task compared to what it could have been. I mean, let's just point this out. And I do want to touch on the offense thing too, though. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, they scored the touchdown. They scored the touchdown with Puka 30-14. Then after that, you get 3 plays, 4 yards, punt, a minute 36 off the clock. Then you go 3 plays, 3 yards, a minute 01 off the clock. Then 3 plays, 7 yards, a minute 36. And then the next one, 7 plays, 51 yards, and the missed field goal. So it was the offense, if they had just done a tiny bit more, get it first down, get a couple first downs, this game is over. And that's what happens when you're playing really good teams. When you're playing really good teams, it's never enough. There's never enough. There's never enough first downs, never enough points, never enough touchdowns. And especially when you're on the road, you put yourself in that situation. But I seen this thing on people on Twitter. Oh, why is everyone freaking out? I mean, the season, this is not an elimination game or anything like that. Yeah, no one's saying it is, right? This is a Rams team that we know can beat anyone, but they can also lose to anyone, right? And there's no way that you can sugarcoat this. I see a lot of other Rams shows sugarcoating this and saying, they're going to be fine. This is a team that, look at 2021. They won a wild card game. They had to go on the road. Cam Akers almost lost them that game. He had the love of the game route, and he had a miraculous play to beat Tampa Bay, right? But the truth is, when you win the 1 seed, you have to win one home game to get one home game to get to the Super Bowl. Yep. And now you have to win 3. Now you have to go on the road. Now Yeah, it's just total. So I tweet out something and someone tweeted back at me saying, "Oh, it just got 10% harder. 10% harder? Try 50% harder."
Think about where they have to go, right? Look, if they get lucky, might not be the right word, but fortunate, and you get to go to Tampa or Charlotte, okay, that is about the best case scenario. But after that, you're going to go to Chicago, you're going to go to Green Bay, you're going to go to San Francisco, you're going to go to Seattle, you're going to go to Philadelphia. Those are brutal places to go try to win a game. Can they? Of course they can. And this isn't that it's over, but it got not 10% harder. It got 50% harder. It got significantly more challenging. And look, here's the other thing. I know we touched on it briefly, Doug. I'm 95% sure I've said it here. I know I've said it on my radio show. And Harrison Mevis has been really good for the Rams since they put him in there. But that was the first time that since he's been on this team, they asked him to make a kick with a whole bunch of pressure on his back, and he missed it.
And it was 48 yards. It wasn't 58 yards. It was 48.
No, it's a kick that an NFL kicker should make. I know it was raining. It wasn't really particularly windy at that moment. And pressure will bust a pipe. It will. That's why those guys that can make those kicks under pressure are so valuable. And it wasn't like he shanked it. It wasn't a terrible kick, but it missed. And now all of a sudden, their inability to move the ball, their inability to get a stop, their inability to trust their special teams in these moments, all of these things are adding up to, I don't know. We'll see. They got a chance. Now, let me be optimistic for a second. The Seahawks are the only team I've seen the Rams play all season long where I feel like if they played each other 10 times, I think it's probably 5-5. I really do think it's a toss-up because the Rams clearly should have won last night. Quite frankly, the Seahawks probably should have won at SoFi Stadium where Darnold turned it over 4 times and the Rams won by 2 points. So I think if they played a bunch of times, it's about a 50-50 proposition. Everyone else the Rams have played, the Rams have looked significantly better than. They are 11-4. They're a really good team. They've taken care of their business most of the season, but it's just that the stakes were so much higher that the difference between being home or away could be the difference between going or not. I think they're better than Philadelphia. I think they're better than San Francisco. I think they're better than Chicago. I think they're better than Green Bay. But having to go play in those places changes the equation. I don't know if they're better than Seattle. I think they're as good as Seattle, but I don't think that Seattle's afraid of the Rams. I think that game would be amazing to see. I was talking with JB Long, the voice of the Rams, before the game, and he said to me, he goes, I just got a feeling in the pit of my stomach that we're going to see these guys again, that this is not over, that this is going to be a 3-game series this year. And I think he's right. I think these are the 2 best teams in the NFC, and I feel like they're going to see each other again.
I do too. I mean, I think that I think the Rams are better than the Seahawks. I think they are. I really do. I mean, they caused 4 turnovers against Sam Darnold the first one. They caused 3. I mean, you punch that ball at the cup, you get the Wallace interception, you get the Kobe Turner interception. You should have won that game. The Rams are the better football team, and that's what makes this so incredibly frustrating about all this. And look, the only thing that kind of that leaks into my brain saying, okay, stop being a homer, take off the Rams color glasses, is the problems that have persisted are continuing to persist. We didn't even talk about Kenneth Walker breaking off a 55-yard run and them averaging almost 10 yards per carry. The run defense was bad for the first time and letting explosive runs happen since we saw that with that game against the Carolina Panthers. So is that back, right? It's like man. You see Pennywise with the red balloon, right? That's how I feel with the special teams. That's how I feel with the run defense sometimes. That's how I feel with the lack of pressure sometimes. But we know there's an offensive football game. And when you have a quarterback, and look, here's the thing, Puka Nacua. We'll talk about Puka in the next segment a little bit. JSN has been the best receiver in the NFL this year. Puka looked like he was in another tier last night.
He did.
Puka looked like he was in another tier last night. And when you have guys that are playing at that level in games like this, you have to have confidence. But look, we'll turn the optimism on. We're going to give you the haters guide to the rest of the season and who you need to hate against, what you need to root for. That's coming up next on Locked On Rams.
This episode of Locked On Rams is brought to you by Prize Picks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports, right? Bowl games starting tonight, as a matter of fact. Big basketball matchups, playoff pushes, which we've been talking about. And, of course, it's all happening at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is Prize Picks, because Prize Picks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections. look at your lineup, lock it in, and you're in the game. It's simple, it's fast, and it's available in 45 states, including right here in California, Texas, Florida, Georgia, and many, many others. And Prize Picks has added an extra layer of excitement for the holiday sports schedule. Creating a lineup can take less than a minute. The app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. And the new Stacks feature, it lets you choose the same player up to 3 times in one lineup, like more on a quarterback's passing yards, touchdowns, and rushing yards, right? So download that Prize Picks app today. Don't forget to use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right.
And welcome back to Locked On Rams. Thank you for making Locked On Rams your first listen every single weekday. Free and available wherever you get your podcast. Locked On Rams, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Travis, in our third segment, let's see what has to happen for the Rams to get back into getting that 1 seed. Hey, like Bluto said, Animal House, was it over when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor? Right? When the going gets tough, the tough gets going, right? Hey, just leave him alone. He's on a roll, right? So the truth is, it's not over. The Rams, had they had won, you would have had a 95% chance of finishing with a division win, a 90% chance of getting that first round bye, getting the 1 seed. Now those odds are 24% chance to win the division, 20% chance of getting that 1 seed. So first thing you need to do is you need to take care of your own business, right? You need to beat the Atlanta Falcons. You need to beat the Arizona Cardinals. I think we feel pretty good about that. And then if that happens, you need some help. You need the Carolina Panthers, the Indianapolis Colts, the Chicago Bears, or the San Francisco 49ers to do some work for you. The Rams need the Seahawks to lose one of their final 2 games to either the Panthers or the 49ers.
Not impossible.
Not impossible at all.
Yeah.
And if you look at that scenario, both teams would be 13-4. The Rams would have the tiebreaker because you would have the division record and record against common opponents. Now, if the Seahawks lose to the 49ers, though, the Rams need the 49ers to also lose one of its next 2 games against either the Colts or the Bears.
Not impossible.
It's not possible. So basically, Rams beat the Falcons, Cardinals, and then the Seahawks lose to the Panthers and beat 49ers. 49ers beat the Colts and Bears, lose the Seahawks. Bears win or lose versus the Packers, lose the 49ers, and win or lose the Lions. So it's not impossible. Rams go 2-0, Seahawks go 1-1, 49ers go 2-1, Bears go 2-1, and Rams get the 1 seed. It's as simple as that. Get those tickets ready. We're going back to SoFi.
I hope so. I look, impossible, no. Unlikely, yes. And I look, after the sting of what happened on Thursday night starts to fade, and they start to get ready for Atlanta. That double incentive for Atlanta. You not only do you need to win the game, but you want to make sure that Atlanta continues to lose because you have their pick. The rest of this stuff will start to open up. That I think this week was the first week where you could really kind of look at the seeding and feel like, okay, we got a chance here to not just control your own destiny, but there's just not enough time. That being said, there is enough time for weird what to happen. And weird what does tend to happen in sports. It happens all the time. It almost never goes according to plan. So, there is some optimism out there. And I keep coming back to the same thing. They're good enough to go into anybody else's building and win that game. Don't get it twisted. I'd much rather have it here than anywhere else. But can they win in Chicago, Philadelphia, Green Bay, San Francisco, Seattle? Sure they can. It's just I don't think anybody wants to see that they have to.
Exactly. And it's not like it's 1%, right? It's not impossible. It's highly improbable. Now, last thing, Puka Nacua, after the week that he's had, and he goes to the locker room, he tweets about the refs, saying, "Oh, was I wrong?" And talk about the stripes and this and that. And of course, he deletes the tweet, but not before somebody screenshot it and reposted it. Thoughts on Puka Nacua's actions?
He did the thing that was just about impossible to do in a short period of time, where he took a big controversy and nearly put it to bed like that. Right? The only way that he was going to put it to bed was to apologize, which he did, and then go out there and be so blanking good that everybody went, man, did kind of a dumb thing to do, but did you see that? And that's exactly what he did. And everybody was ready to move on, even in the face of a really disheartening loss, even in the face of a difficult situation where there is controversy involving the officials. And then this guy immediately throws gasoline on the one last little flickering ember of this thing, and it blows up all over again. And he knows it was dumb because they deleted it right away, right? That if this is something you want to stand by, it would still be there. It's not. He also needs to understand, and I'm sure he does, but for whatever reason decided to do it, is that the second it goes out, somebody's grabbing it. It's not going to go away, even if you delete it. And that was his first instinct, to double down on something that was dumb to begin with after he'd almost put it to sleep, really makes me question his maturity, really makes me question his understanding of what he did in the first place. And I just don't get what he was thinking. And I've tried really hard. Look, I'm literally twice his age, okay? So I have the benefit of more life experience and less impulsivity of just being older than him. And I'm trying to put myself back into that time when you're in your mid-20s and you do stuff that you just do it, right? You don't even really consider what's going on. I can't get to the point where after you had a moment that was really the first crisis of your career, or the first really big misstep of your career, that you do the exact same thing 2 days later after you've had to, he was going to get fined. Now he'll get fined again. It leads me to that. I guess, you could keep coming back to, who cares? He's a great football player. He is a great football player, but bad decision-making tends to show up at the worst possible times. And I was stunned to see it. I'm really curious to see what happens moving forward. I'm curious to see what the fine is going to be from the NFL, because that's coming. And the one thing the league will not tolerate, they just simply won't tolerate it, is you calling the integrity of the league into question. And that's exactly what he did. And he did it twice in 3 days.
He did. And what I absolutely hate about it is he's so good, as you point out, that any conversation that's not celebrating him as a player is maddening to me, because it really should be like, this guy is the greatest story in the NFL the last couple of years. 5th round pick, best receiver in the NFL, potentially, definitely in the conversation for that. And I hate the fact that a guy that's so likable now has so many haters, and that takes a while to kind of to shake off. We know it's not Rams fans. We know the Rams fans and guys like us, we're going to support Puka. We love Puka, absolutely, 100%. But to me, it almost feels like the fact that he keeps doing things, and the fact that he's still willing to go tweet that, it makes me feel like, hey, he's not worried about a particular teammate coming up to him and saying, don't do that. He's not worried about a particular coach coming up to him and saying that. So it kind of where's the ramifications of, hey, like there's going to be consequences. I don't think that he's fearing any consequences when he's doing these things. And it kind of makes me wonder kind of what's going on inside that building just a tad bit, right? I mean, it almost reminds me of when my mom used to get mad at me, it was always, Doug, why do you always have to get the last word? Why do you always have to get the last word? It's like last night I felt like he was trying to get the last word instead of, like you said, moving on. And he had released a statement. He had kind of taken that.
He'd done it right. Like he'd gotten it almost exactly right. I did something I shouldn't have done. I didn't understand what it is that I had agreed to do. I apologize. It will not happen again. And then, because think about it, it went from the controversy about the referees to the controversy about the touchdown dance. And then we reignited the referee thing all over again. It really showed a lack of understanding of the issue. And because I'm twice his age, because I am not hyper online the way that a lot of people are, I don't understand who that tweet is for. Like, who's he trying to, like, Rams fans are on your side, bro. Rams fans know that the referees were whack last night. Like, we get, like, who are you trying to communicate with? If you want to bitch to your teammates about this, go ahead. If you want to complain can you believe they did this to us on the plane ride back to LA? Go ahead. If you want to turn to Devontae Adams and say, I can't, like, talk to your guys, but why does it have to be on your phone? Why does it have to be out to the world? This is the part that I don't get. Like, who are you trying to impress or get in front of? Because the only person that matters that sees that is the league. That's it. That's the only person that can get you in trouble with something like this. It's the only entity that can say, what? Oh, okay. And you handed it to them. Again, there's a generational thing here about, I have to give you all of my innermost thoughts online. I don't understand that at all. Like, just keep it to yourself, keep it to your friends and family. But it just really makes you go, okay, I know he's a great player, but now you're the guy that does dumb things.
Yeah, no, he's rebelling a little bit, right? It feels like he's rebelling a little bit, but hey, man, nothing is gonna change his effort and his production on the field, hopefully, and just I think it's a great learning moment for him, and I really
obviously not.
If I had to bet whether or not he was going to do this in the future, things like this, like when Antonio Brown, I'm not putting him in the same category as Antonio Brown in any way, shape, or form, but when Antonio Brown was doing stuff, you're like, okay, something else is coming, something else is coming, something else is coming. I just, in my heart of hearts, I believe in Sean McVay, this organization, and Puka Nacua, to the point where I would not be shocked if this is just it forever, and we're just talking about football with this guy for the rest of his career. I kind of just feel that way.
I really hope so. And if there was somebody that I would trust to, implement what you just described, D-Mac, it would be Sean McVay. It would be the Rams infrastructure and their ability to keep noisy stuff out of the organization, silly stuff, which is exactly what this is, out of the organization. But I'll be honest, I don't feel that way. I think he showed us what his deal is. If you do that twice after the world blows up in your face the way that it did, and you immediately go back and do it again, that's one of those, really? Okay. For me now, anything else dumb that happens, it's like, yeah, he's that guy. Like, put it to you this way: if Matthew Stafford tweeted something crazy last night, you'd be like, "Whoa, that's not like that guy at all." Like, if pick your guy, Jared Verse, whoever your guy is, but with him, you're like, here we go again. Like, he's already crossed into that line of he's the guy that does the dumb thing, and now he's the guy that's done the dumb thing more than once. Like, think about the silly live stream thing we talked about a few weeks ago. Was it a big deal? No. And then you had this. Was it a big deal? It's a bigger deal. The part about the touchdown dance was a very big deal. And now all of a sudden you have this, which is it a big deal? I mean, it's not a big deal about what he said. It's a big deal about the fact that he didn't learn not to say it.
Just define it.
Yeah. And it's unnecessary. And I don't know, man. I'll be honest. It's interesting.
I think for me too, like, kind of last thing is like there is a kind of keep the main thing. And I think that it's a good problem to have on his front, knowing that, hey, guess what? The standard is different for you because of how good you are, because of the city you play in, right? If he was putting up a kind of average numbers, we wouldn't care. But the fact is, the guy is legitimately a bona fide star in this league that should really potentially be one of the faces of this league. And when you look at Los Angeles, it's a pretty high standard. And people have gone, I've heard a lot of different opinions on how significant the stream was, just the idea of bringing in a streamer leading up to the biggest week of the regular season. I look at this. Would Shohei Ohtani ever do that? Would Kobe Bryant ever do that? Would Aaron Donald ever do that? Would some of the greatest athletes that have played in this town ever even think of doing anything other than obsessing about the game 24/7, 365 leading up to that game? The answer is no. So you got to consider the standard because of you've elevated the city you play in.
The one thing that I'll end on this, and I think it's mostly a positive, is thank God he played well. That even with the noise and the stuff that was going on and the dumb things that he did, he went out there and went off. Like, his response to this stuff was to play at the very highest level that he could. To your point, he might be the best wide receiver in football. Matthew Stafford certainly helps there, but his response to noise was, okay, watch this. That's at least good news for the short term. Hopefully he responds like that in Atlanta and in Arizona and whatever happens in the playoffs. But he's now officially the guy that if he did another thing that made you think, was irresponsible, he's the guy that does those things now.
No doubt about it. And for me, the fact that he played as well as he did makes it even more frustrating for me. It makes me feel like that's even more regrettable because it should be highlighting how great of a player he is. But that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Rams. My name is Doug McCain. You can follow me on X and Instagram at DMAC_LA. And you can follow the People's Champ, Mr. Travis Rogers, at Travis Rogers. And until next time, whose house? It's Locked On Rams house.